They say fear is the oldest emotion known to man, older than love, older than anger, older than ambition. It's primal. It's what kept our ancestors alive when they faced beasts in the wild. But in the modern world, the beasts are no longer lions or wolves. They're invisible. Deadlines, rejection, failure, loneliness, the fear of not being good enough, the fear of never achieving your potential, the fear of judgment, uncertainty, loss, and death. And the truth is, fear has evolved. It's no longer a signal to run for survival. It's become the chain that holds most people back from ever living. Every great Stoic understood that the difference between a free man and a slave wasn't wealth or power, it was freedom from fear. Seneca once said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And that's the essence of it. Fear is not the event. Fear is your mind's story about the event. It's the projection, the exaggeration, the imaginary outcome you torture yourself with. What destroys a man is rarely reality, it's his perception of it. To understand how to conquer fear, you must first understand its nature. Fear is not your enemy, it's your compass. It points toward what you need to face to grow. When you feel fear, it's not a sign to run, it's a signal to pay attention. The Stoics didn't seek to eliminate fear completely because they knew fear had value. It sharpens awareness, keeps you cautious, and prevents arrogance. But the key is to control it, not to be controlled by it. The moment fear dictates your choices, you are no longer living consciously, you are reacting like a slave to your impulses. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." That line, "this you have the power to revoke," is the weapon the Stoics used against fear. They understood that fear isn't external, it's internal. It doesn't exist in the world, it exists in your perception. Think about it. Most of your fears never actually happen. The conversations you dread, the failures you imagine, the worst-case scenarios that keep you up at night, they almost never unfold the way you expect. Yet your body reacts as if they are happening now. Your heart races, your breath shortens, your palms sweat. Why? Because the mind doesn't differentiate between imagination and reality when it comes to fear. That's why Marcus and Epictetus drilled the same lesson over and over. Learn to control your impressions. When a fearful thought enters your mind, pause and ask, "Is this true, or is it just my imagination running wild?" That single question separates a Stoic from a slave to anxiety. The problem with modern fear is that it's subtle. In ancient Rome, fear was survival, the threat of battle, exile, disease. Today, it's psychological. Fear of rejection, fear of being seen as a failure, fear of disappointing others, fear of not fitting into society's script. These fears are quieter, but deadlier, because they operate beneath awareness. They shape your choices silently. You don't take the risk, you don't speak your truth, you don't pursue your dream. You stay safe, small, invisible, and call it being realistic. But the Stoics would call it what it truly is: cowardice disguised as logic. The ego builds stories to protect you from discomfort. It rationalizes fear into safety. But comfort is not safety. Comfort is slow death. Seneca wrote, "He suffers more than necessary who suffers before it is necessary." Every time you imagine failure before acting, you double your pain, once in the imagination, once in reality. The Stoic approach was to reverse this pattern. Instead of avoiding fear, they practiced it. They called it premeditation malorum, the premeditation of evils. Every morning they visualized the worst that could happen: loss, rejection, death, pain. Not to become negative, but to desensitize themselves. By imagining it calmly, they stripped fear of its surprise. When the event came, they were already mentally prepared. That's the Stoic advantage. They rehearsed fear until it had no power left. Let's translate that into modern life. If you fear speaking in public, imagine it daily. Imagine stuttering, forgetting your words, being laughed at. Feel the discomfort in your chest. Then remind yourself, even if that happens, I will not die. Fear loses its control when you accept its worst outcome. Fear is powerless against acceptance. That's why Epictetus said, when you are about to take on some task, remind yourself of what kind of task it is. Anticipation replaces panic. You stop being surprised by difficulty and start being prepared for it. Here's the truth you need to internalize. You cannot eliminate fear. You can only shrink it by expanding your courage. Fear remains the same, you grow bigger. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the mastery of it. And courage is a muscle. It grows when you face what scares you. Every time you confront discomfort, whether it's a difficult conversation, a creative risk, or that leap of faith, you train your mind to obey you, not your fear. That's how you become mentally unstoppable. Most people waste years waiting for fear to disappear before they act, but fear doesn't leave. You must act while afraid. Seneca taught this exact idea. If you wish to be rid of fear, assume that you may lose what you love, that you may fail in what you attempt, that pain is inevitable. Then you will no longer be afraid. That is radical acceptance. The understanding that fear has no control once you've already accepted the possibility of loss. You can't scare a man who's made peace with pain. You can't control a man who's accepted death. That's why the Stoics appeared so calm during chaos. Their secret wasn't indifference, it was mastery. Think of fear as a shadow. It follows you wherever there is light. The brighter your ambition, the darker your fear. So instead of trying to erase the shadow, strengthen your light. You can't remove fear, but you can outshine it. Every great philosopher, warrior, and creator understood this truth. They felt fear, but they moved anyway. Marcus faced plagues, wars, betrayal, and the collapse of an empire, yet he ruled with serenity. Why? Because he refused to let fear enter his decision-making. He said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Fear is not an obstacle, it's a guidepost. If something terrifies you, that's where growth hides. Modern Stoicism applies the same formula. Your fear is your map. The things you avoid, that uncomfortable call, that creative risk, that leap of faith, those are the exact things that will build your strength. Every time you avoid fear, it grows stronger. Every time you confront it, it weakens. Imagine fear as a beast chained inside your mind. Each time you run, the chain grows tighter. But each time you confront it, the chain loosens. Over time, the beast obeys. The Stoic goal isn't to destroy the beast, it's to tame it. To practice this, start small. Daily do one thing that slightly scares you. Speak up, take initiative, say no when it's uncomfortable. Each act of courage compounds. The Stoics believed in gradual exposure, training the mind through voluntary hardship. They slept on the floor, bathed in cold water, walked barefoot, fasted, and deliberately sought discomfort. Not because they were masochists, but because they knew that fear thrives in comfort. By controlling their environment, they controlled their mind. Every time you voluntarily choose discomfort, you reprogram your brain. I am safe even in uncertainty. That's the antidote to anxiety. Anxiety is fear stretched over time. It's fear without action. When you dwell on what-ifs, your body prepares for a threat that never comes. The Stoics solved this with one question: is this within my control? If yes, act. If no, release. Anxiety dies when clarity enters. You stop trying to control the uncontrollable. You reclaim your focus to what actually matters: your thoughts, choices, and reactions. That's all you truly own. Here's the ultimate mental reframe. Fear.
Part 2. The root of fear. A prison built by your own mind. Fear doesn't begin in the world outside you. It begins in the story you tell yourself about what the world might do to you. Every fear, failure, rejection, loss, pain, comes from one place: your attachment to how things should be. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus said, "Men are not disturbed by things, but by the views they take of things." Fear is not an external event, it's your interpretation of that event. Think about it. You fear losing your job, but what you're truly afraid of is losing the identity that job gives you. You fear rejection, but what you actually fear is that rejection confirming your own inner doubt that maybe you're not enough. You fear death, but what terrifies you isn't death itself. It's the loss of control, the end of your ability to experience and direct your life. Fear is a mirror showing you your attachments, and until you face that mirror with honesty, you'll keep fighting shadows that only you create. Every fear in your life has a root system, like weeds growing in your mind. One root might be your ego, another might be your desire for control, another your addiction to comfort. When you cut off fear at the surface, it always grows back. But when you go deeper, you'll see that fear feeds off illusion. It survives on what-ifs and maybes. The Stoics would sit in meditation and imagine the worst possible outcome, not because they were pessimists, but because they wanted to starve their fears by dragging them into the light. Seneca said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Read that again. You're not afraid of what is, you're afraid of what might be. You spend years living in fear of a future that will likely never arrive. The Stoics practiced what's called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. They would mentally rehearse the loss of wealth, status, comfort, and even loved ones, not out of morbidity, but to break fear's illusion of permanence. When you've already accepted loss in your mind, fear has no leverage left over you. Look at modern life. Every screen, every advertisement, every platform sells fear. Fear of missing out, fear of aging, fear of failure, fear of being forgotten. But behind every fear is the same silent lie, that you need something outside yourself to be whole. The Stoics rebelled against that. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing, but to your estimate of it." When you accept this truth, the chains of fear begin to crack. You realize you've been voluntarily locking yourself inside a cage made of what if. Fear thrives on avoidance. The moment you look directly at it, it weakens. The moment you act in spite of it, it dies. Every single time you've done something that terrified you, spoken up, risked embarrassment, walked away from what was safe, you became a little freer. The Stoic warrior doesn't aim to destroy fear. He aims to master it, because fear isn't your enemy, it's your compass. It points toward the exact place where your growth is waiting. You fear public speaking? That means your self-image depends too much on others' opinions. You fear failure? That means your worth is still tied to outcome, not effort. You fear change. That means you've mistaken comfort for peace. Each fear is a doorway. You either open it or let it imprison you. Epictetus said, "When something happens, the only thing in your power is your reaction." That's the Stoic's weapon. Control of perception. When others panic, the Stoic breathes. When others flee, he stands still, not because he feels no fear, but because he refuses to bow to it. You must understand, fear cannot be eliminated. It's part of the human operating system, but it can be reprogrammed. The mind is like a fire. It consumes whatever you feed it. Feed it what-ifs, and it burns in anxiety. Feed it purpose, and it burns in courage. Fear is energy, misdirected imagination. The same imagination that can build empires can also build prisons. The Stoics learned to redirect this energy through reason. When fear rises, ask yourself, is this under my control? If not, why suffer twice, once in thought and once in reality? The Stoics didn't pray for safety, they prayed for strength. They didn't wish for calm seas, they trained to sail through storms. You can begin your own Stoic training by practicing 3 exercises. First, voluntary discomfort. Do something slightly uncomfortable daily: cold showers, fasting, solitude. Why? Because fear thrives on softness. The softer your life, the louder your fears. When you prove to your mind that you can survive discomfort, the world loses its grip over you. Second, mental rehearsal. Every morning, imagine potential setbacks. Someone insults you. You lose a deal. Your plan fails. Don't panic. Instead, breathe and say, "I have prepared my mind for this." You'll find that nothing truly surprises you anymore. Third, reframing. When fear appears, replace "what if I fail" with "what will I learn?" Replace "what if I lose" with "what if I grow?" The Stoics didn't deny emotion, they reframed it through logic. There's a story of a Stoic philosopher who was told his ship had sunk, taking all his goods with it. His response was, "Then I must now live as a man without goods." That's the essence of fearlessness, not pretending loss doesn't hurt, but accepting that it doesn't define you. When life strips you down, the Stoic stands naked, yet unbroken, because his worth is internal. You fear losing things because you've built your identity around them. But when you anchor your peace in your character, no loss can shake it. Fear doesn't vanish when you become successful. It only changes shape. The poor man fears poverty. The rich man fears losing wealth. The single man fears loneliness. The married man fears heartbreak. The point isn't to eliminate fear, it's to transcend it. Stoicism teaches you that freedom isn't found in controlling the world, but in controlling yourself. You will still feel fear, but it will no longer own you. The goal is not to be fearless, but to be fear-free. There's a difference. Fearless means reckless. Fear-free means calm, deliberate, and grounded in reason. When Marcus Aurelius faced betrayal, war, and plague, he didn't hide. He wrote in his journal at night, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That's not poetry, it's survival philosophy. The Stoics didn't talk courage, they lived it. When fear comes to you next time, when your heart races, when your chest tightens, pause. Don't run. Don't numb it. Just observe. Ask yourself, is this fear serving me or controlling me? Then choose the response that aligns with virtue, not panic. Because fear cannot harm a man who refuses to surrender his reason.
Part 3. Transforming anxiety into power. Anxiety is fear's younger brother, quieter, subtler, but just as dangerous. It's the silent hum beneath your thoughts, the restless energy that keeps you scrolling at 2 a.m., the invisible pressure on your chest when nothing's even wrong. Unlike fear, which reacts to immediate danger, anxiety is the anticipation of what might happen. It's your mind trying to control the uncontrollable. The Stoics knew this state well. They lived through wars, plagues, exile, betrayal, yet their writings remain astonishingly calm. Why? Because they learned the art of transforming anxiety into fuel. To the Stoics, anxiety wasn't a curse, it was information, a signal pointing to where the mind had lost alignment with reason. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Today I escaped anxiety," or no, I discarded it, because it was within me, in my own perceptions, not outside. That line is the key to mastering anxiety. It's not something that happens to you, it's something you generate, and what you create, you can control. Modern people make anxiety worse by fighting it. You feel anxious about being anxious. You spiral into self-judgment. The Stoics took the opposite approach. They didn't fight the storm. They sailed through it. They observed their emotions as passing clouds, not permanent conditions. When you label anxiety as bad, you feed it with resistance. But when you see it as raw energy, a surge of awareness, you can transmute it. Imagine anxiety as the same physiological state as excitement. The difference lies only in interpretation. Before a battle, even great warriors feel their heart racing, their breath tightening, but they don't call it panic, they call it readiness. The Stoics redefined their sensations through logic, transforming emotion into action. You can do the same. Next time anxiety grips you, stop labeling it as weakness. Tell yourself, this is energy. This is my body preparing me to rise. Let's dissect the Stoic process. The first step, naming the cause. Anxiety thrives in vagueness. You say, I'm anxious, but about what? The Stoics forced clarity. Seneca advised writing down your fears to expose their absurdity. When your mind spirals, pause and articulate, I am anxious because I fear X might happen.
Then question that fear. Is this under my control? If yes, act. If no, release it. Anxiety is a problem of misplaced focus. You obsess over outcomes that don't belong to you, instead of actions that do. The Stoic shifts from worry to preparation. Anxiety says, "What if it goes wrong?" The Stoic replies, "Then I'll handle it when it does." That single shift from prediction to preparation neutralizes half your anxiety. The second step is anchoring in the present. Anxiety pulls your mind into imaginary futures. Stoicism yanks it back into the now. Marcus wrote, "Confine yourself to the present, because in the present, anxiety dissolves. It cannot survive when you are fully engaged with reality." Think of your breath. Think of your feet touching the ground. That's Stoic mindfulness, not mystical, not detached, practical awareness. When you fully inhabit this moment, you realize 99% of your fears are mental projections. The Stoics trained this awareness through meditation and journaling. Every evening, they'd review their day. What went well? What provoked emotion? What was within my control? This daily audit reprogrammed their mind for clarity and composure. The third step is accepting uncertainty. The anxious mind craves control, but control is a myth. The Stoics didn't fight uncertainty. They embraced it as the natural order of life. Epictetus said, "Seek not for events to happen as you wish, but wish to happen as they do." When you stop demanding the world obey your expectations, anxiety loses its grip. Most of your tension comes from inner resistance to what is. You want guarantees, but life gives you none, only opportunities for strength. The Stoic smiles at uncertainty because he sees it as a training ground for virtue. Every moment of unpredictability is a test. Can you stay rational in chaos? That's the true measure of mastery. Now, anxiety often disguises itself as productivity. You overthink every step, plan endlessly, worry about being ready. But readiness is an illusion. The Stoic acts before he feels ready. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." While you're busy anticipating every possible problem, life is passing by. The Stoic antidote: action. Anxiety feeds on inaction. The longer you wait, the louder the mind gets. You must move, even imperfectly. Take the next logical step. When you act, your focus shifts from speculation to execution. The Stoic doesn't waste his energy asking, "Will this work?" He asks, "What can I do right now?" That's power. There's a paradox here. Anxiety often arises because you care deeply. You want things to work out. You want meaning. That's good. The Stoics never preached apathy. They preached disciplined passion. The goal isn't to stop caring. It's to care without attachment. To act with full intensity, yet remain indifferent to outcome. Do your duty, Marcus wrote, without attachment to results. That is freedom. When you shift from craving success to committing to excellence, anxiety fades, because your worth no longer depends on what happens, only on how you respond. Anxiety also thrives in the mind that never rests. The Stoics valued stillness as strength. They'd retreat into solitude, not to escape life, but to recalibrate their perspective. In modern times, solitude terrifies people. They need constant noise, distraction, stimulation. But anxiety can't be cured by running from silence. The more you fill your day with noise, the more fragmented your mind becomes. Stillness isn't the absence of movement, it's the presence of control. 10 minutes of sitting quietly, breathing, observing your thoughts without judgment. That's Stoic training, because the mind that can sit still can also face storms. The Stoics were warriors of emotion. They didn't suppress anxiety, they studied it. Marcus would write, "Remember that what disturbs you is not the thing itself, but your opinion about it." That's your weapon, the ability to reinterpret your emotions. Anxiety says, "I can't handle this." The Stoic replies, "I've handled worse." Anxiety says, "What if I fail?" The Stoic says, "Then I'll learn faster." Every time you use logic to challenge fear, you're forging emotional armor. The modern world glorifies hacks and quick fixes, but Stoicism demands inner engineering. It's not about feeling good, it's about becoming good. Anxiety is often the symptom of a life out of alignment with values. You say yes when you mean no. You chase goals that aren't yours. You seek validation instead of truth. The Stoic lives by logos, reason, integrity, self-command. When your actions match your principles, peace follows naturally. Anxiety is the friction between who you are and who you pretend to be. So ask yourself, where in my life am I lying? To myself or others? Clean that up, and your mind will quiet. Even the greatest Stoics felt anxiety. Marcus Aurelius often wrote about his fatigue, his doubts, his struggles to stay composed. Yet he always returned to the same truth. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. That's the Stoic transmutation of anxiety into strength. When your mind screams, "I can't," smile, because that's the signal you're on the edge of growth. The Stoic doesn't wait for peace to begin. He creates it through motion. Anxiety can be your downfall or your weapon.
Part 4. The Stoic Practice of Courage. Turning fear into fuel. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the mastery of it. Every Stoic understood this simple, brutal fact. The man who claims to feel no fear is either lying or unaware. The real warrior feels it fully and acts anyway. Courage is not emotionless. It's disciplined emotion. It's what happens when logic overrides panic, when duty outweighs comfort. Fear whispers, "Stay safe," but courage answers, "Move forward." This is the moment where every human being separates into two categories: the one who listens to fear and the one that uses it as fuel. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it." That's courage. Whatever life throws at you, pain, humiliation, uncertainty, the Stoic mind burns it, transforms it into light, into fuel for progress. Fear becomes the material for greatness. But here's the truth most people never face. Fear isn't your enemy, it's your guide. It points to the exact places where your growth lies hidden. Every fear reveals what you secretly desire to protect: your reputation, your comfort, your ego. The Stoics believed that what you fear most marks the border of your freedom. The man who fears rejection is enslaved by others' opinions. The man who fears loss is chained to possessions. The man who fears pain is trapped by weakness. To live with courage is to shatter these invisible chains one by one until nothing owns you. Not comfort, not pleasure, not even your own pride.
That's what the Stoics called apatheia. Not apathy, but freedom from emotional slavery. Seneca once said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." Fear is the biggest thief of time. It keeps you analyzing, waiting, second-guessing, while the moments you could have lived pass you by. Courage, on the other hand, is time's greatest multiplier. It compresses years of hesitation into seconds of bold action. Look at any moment of progress in your life, and you'll find one pattern. You acted despite fear. You sent that message. You took that leap. You faced that truth. And that single act opened doors hesitation would never have found. That's the Stoic secret. Courage isn't a grand event, but a habit of movement. The more you act in fear's face, the weaker its voice becomes. The Stoics trained courage daily, not through philosophy alone, but through deliberate hardship. Epictetus told his students, "Difficulties show what men are." He didn't mean heroic acts in battle. He meant the small moments, waking early when comfort says sleep, speaking the truth when lies are easier, enduring insult without retaliation. Each of these is a rep for your courage muscle. Every time you choose discomfort willingly, you remind your mind who's in charge. You cannot think your way into courage. You must train it. The Stoics practiced premeditatio malorum, imagining worst-case scenarios so vividly that fear lost its sting. They visualized losing wealth, status, even loved ones, not out of coldness, but to accept that everything external is on loan from fate. Once you internalize that truth, fear has no leverage. Modern life has made courage soft. People confuse comfort with peace. They seek safety in routines, hide behind screens, and call it stability. But Stoic courage is not built in comfort. It's built in friction. Courage means choosing the hard thing when the easy one whispers. It's refusing to let emotions dictate your behavior. The Stoics believed in controlled exposure, putting yourself through voluntary struggle so involuntary struggle doesn't break you. That's why you train in the cold, why you fast, why you speak when your throat trembles. You condition your mind to say, "I've been here before." When pain comes, it finds you prepared. There's a powerful Stoic distinction between physical and moral courage. Physical courage faces external danger. Moral courage faces internal resistance. The second is rarer and harder. Anyone can stand against an enemy, but can you stand against your own ego? Can you admit when you're wrong? Can you act virtuously when no one's watching? Marcus wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." That's moral courage. To live your ideals without applause. In a world obsessed with appearance, the Stoic chooses integrity. Courage for him isn't about being loud, it's about being consistent. Fear disguises itself as logic. It whispers in your mind, rationalizing avoidance. Now's not the right time. You're not ready yet. Wait until it feels safe. But courage understands this trick. It knows fear always speaks with perfect timing and reason. The Stoic replies, "The time will never feel right." Courage isn't waiting for confidence, it's acting to create it. Epictetus reminded his students that no one becomes brave by theory. They become brave by doing brave things. You must act into courage, not wait for it. When fear says stop, take one more step. That's the moment transformation begins. The Stoics also practiced amor fati, love of fate. Courage is not just enduring difficulty, it's embracing it. The obstacle is the way, Marcus said. Every setback is a disguised teacher. When you lose money, you learn detachment. When you're betrayed, you learn discernment. When you fail, you learn resilience. Courage isn't blind optimism. It's the trained ability to find power inside pain. The Stoic doesn't ask, "Why me?" He asks, "How can I use this?" That question turns every tragedy into training. The man who can convert suffering into strength is untouchable. Let's be brutally honest. Courage will always feel terrible at first. It's not glamorous. It's your stomach twisting before you speak. It's your heart pounding before you quit what's safe. It's your hands trembling as you take the leap. The Stoics didn't glamorize it. They accepted it. They saw that courage and discomfort are twins. You cannot be brave without being scared first. So stop waiting to feel ready. Readiness is a lie. The Stoic steps forward trembling because he knows that the moment you act, fear begins to fade. Courage doesn't erase fear. It replaces it with momentum. There's also one brutal truth the Stoics understood that modern people resist. Death is the foundation of courage. Memento mori, remember you must die. Every moment could be your last, so what are you waiting for? Fear loses power when you accept mortality. You stop trying to protect a future that isn't promised. You stop seeking safety in an unsafe world. You start living fully because you realize hesitation is the slowest form of death. Marcus reminded himself every morning, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. Imagine living with that awareness, not recklessly, but intentionally. That's Stoic courage, to live each day like it might be your final battle, and to fight it with honor. True courage is calm. It's not loud, reckless, or angry. It's quiet conviction. It's the ability to walk through chaos without losing your center. The Stoic doesn't need to prove his strength. His strength is proven by his composure. You see it in the soldier who keeps his eyes steady while others panic, in the leader who makes rational decisions under pressure, in the person who accepts responsibility instead of blaming. Courage is not a single act, it's a posture of the soul. So when fear whispers again, and it will, remember this. Fear is not there to stop you. It's there to signal that you're alive, that something meaningful stands before you. The Stoic doesn't pray for the fear to vanish. He thanks it for showing him the path. Because fear and growth are always twins. Where one exists, the other hides just behind it. Walk through fear, and you'll meet yourself on the other side. That's courage, the willingness to suffer for what's right, to act without the guarantee of comfort, to walk into darkness.
Part 5. The Stoic weapon against fear. Focus only on what you can control. Here's the truth, brutally and simply. 99% of your fear doesn't come from the situation itself. It comes from your imagination, from obsessing over outcomes you can't control. The Stoics called this the disease of opinion. You imagine failure before it happens. You rehearse rejection before anyone even says no. You live in your mind's theater of worst-case scenarios, and then you wonder why your chest is tight and your mind feels heavy. Fear, in its raw form, is a natural emotion. But anxiety, the chronic state of tension, the what-if spiral, that's not natural. That's the price you pay for wanting control over what was never yours. Epictetus said, "Some things are up to us, and some things are not." This line is the entire cure. Every Stoic who ever lived, Marcus,
Seneca, Epictetus, built their entire system of emotional mastery around this one principle. Because once you divide the world into two categories, what you can control and what you can't, you end anxiety's tyranny over you. Imagine walking into an exam, a date, or an uncertain future. Most people feel fear because they think their peace depends on the outcome, the grade, the impression, the success. But what if you realized none of that is actually in your control? You control your preparation, your effort, your honesty. That's it. The result? It's the universe's concern. When you truly internalize that separation, your fear fades. Because how can you fear something that doesn't belong to you? But this isn't about blind acceptance. Stoicism isn't passive. It's active serenity, doing your absolute best where you have power, then emotionally detaching from the rest. Seneca described fear as pain before pain, meaning fear is suffering that hasn't even arrived yet. You feel anxiety over things that haven't happened and may never happen. You build entire prisons out of hypotheticals. You torture yourself with futures that only exist in your imagination. Marcus Aurelius put it even sharper. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Read that again. You have power over your mind, not the world. That's your battlefield. Let's go deeper. You fear not the thing, but your thoughts about the thing. Epictetus told his students, men are disturbed not by things, but by the views they take of them. The object, the snake, the crowd, the future, doesn't cause fear. Your interpretation does. Change the lens, and the fear collapses. A Stoic sees fear not as an enemy, but as information. Fear shows where your attachment lies. You fear losing something: reputation, control, approval, comfort. So the Stoic doesn't fight fear. He examines it. He asks, what am I really afraid of losing? Why does that thing hold so much power over me? And in that inquiry, he finds freedom. Let's take an example. Say you fear failure. The modern mind treats failure as death, humiliation, rejection, ruin. But the Stoic looks at failure as feedback, as nature's correction. Marcus faced wars, betrayal, disease. Yet his notes to himself were calm, rational, collected. He reminded himself daily that external events are indifferent. They don't define you. What defines you is your response. And fear is the sign that you're clinging too tightly to something outside your control. Here's the paradox. The moment you stop demanding certainty from life, you start to feel powerful again. You stop negotiating with the uncontrollable. You stop needing the world to go your way before you can feel at peace. That's when anxiety dies. Fear thrives in resistance, in your need to predict, protect, and perfect. When you drop that need, fear loses its oxygen. This doesn't make you careless. It makes you fearless in action and calm in chaos. The Stoics practiced this daily. They didn't just talk about control. They lived it. They used mental training called the dichotomy of control to armor their minds. Every night they reflected, what today was within my control? What wasn't? Did I waste energy worrying about what I couldn't change? This reflection purified their focus day after day until they developed emotional invincibility. You can do the same. Each time you feel fear rising, stop and ask, is this within my control? If the answer is no, release it. If yes, take action. Nothing more. No overthinking,
no spiraling, just action or acceptance. Think of fear like a thief. It steals your present moment by forcing you to live in futures that may never come. Stoicism hands you the weapon to slay that thief. Focus. You focus on the controllable with obsessive precision and ignore the rest. That's why Marcus Aurelius was unshakable as emperor. When plague and war consumed Rome, he didn't panic. He wrote calmly in his journal, "If it's endurable, then endure it. Stop complaining." This wasn't arrogance, it was clarity. Clarity born from control over his own judgments. Now here's something most people miss. Fear isn't meant to be eliminated, it's meant to be transformed. Fear shows where you're untrained, where your expectations exceed your resilience. The Stoic doesn't deny fear, he studies it until it teaches him something. Are you scared of rejection? That shows you still crave external validation. Are you scared of failure? That shows you still attach your worth to results. Each fear is a mirror, showing you where you've outsourced your peace. When you start viewing fear this way, anxiety becomes a training partner, not an enemy. You stop trying to suppress it with distractions, dopamine, or escapism. Instead, you use it to strengthen your focus. You turn anxiety into awareness, fear into fuel. You learn to stay calm, not because life is easy, but because you've stopped asking it to be. Here's a powerful exercise from Epictetus' school. Every morning, before stepping into the day, remind yourself, today I will meet people who are selfish, jealous, arrogant, deceitful. Why? Because when you pre-accept life's unpredictability, you're no longer shocked by it. The Stoic's calmness comes from preparation, not naivety. If you've already accepted that difficulty, loss, and uncertainty are part of life, then when they come, you meet them like old friends, not enemies. Fear loses its surprise attack. The modern world sells you the opposite message. Control everything, plan everything, predict everything. But that's exactly why anxiety skyrockets. You're not built to control the uncontrollable. You're built to adapt. And the Stoics mastered that art. The less you demand certainty from life, the more peace you'll have. The less you chase control, the more powerful you'll feel. Because real control begins the moment you stop trying to control the wrong things. When you live by the Stoic principle of control, life starts to simplify. You no longer waste energy on arguments, outcomes, or opinions. You don't try to manipulate what others think of you. You don't obsess over the past or the future. You anchor yourself in the present, the only domain you truly command. The Stoics call this living according to nature. It means aligning your expectations with reality instead of demanding that reality obey you. So the next time you feel anxiety creeping in, whether it's about your career, your relationships, or your future, stop. Don't reach for distraction. Don't drown it in entertainment or overthinking. Sit with it and say, what here is in my control? Then act on that and let go of the rest. That single move, repeated daily, will build unbreakable calm. Because calm isn't the absence of problems. It's the mastery of your inner reactions to them. Let me leave you with this thought. The Stoics didn't eliminate fear by becoming superhuman. They became fearless because they learned to live within the limits.
Part 6. How Stoics face death, rejection, and loss without fear. This is where we confront the ultimate fears every human carries: death, rejection, and loss. These aren't trivial anxieties. They are the core of human suffering.
The Stoics faced them daily, not as abstract concepts, but as unavoidable realities. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of Rome, wrote repeatedly about mortality. Do not act as if you were going to live 10,000 years. Death hangs over you. While you live, while it is in your power, be good. That sentence alone is a battering ram for modern comfort seekers. Death is inevitable. Rejection is inevitable. Loss is inevitable. You cannot escape them. You cannot negotiate with them. But the Stoics discovered a revolutionary truth. The only way to conquer fear is to accept it fully. Modern humans panic at these three threats because they confuse them with annihilation of self. Death isn't merely physical cessation. It's framed as total disappearance. Rejection isn't merely a social event. It's framed as worthlessness. Loss isn't merely losing something. It's framed as failure of life itself. The Stoics tore these illusions apart. They asked, what belongs to you? Life taught them one lesson over and over. The only thing truly yours is your mind, your virtue, your reasoning. External events, people, status, health, wealth, are borrowed, temporary. Epictetus declared, wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. Rejection, loss, death? These are events outside your control. To fear them is to enslave yourself to what is not yours. Take death, for example. Every morning, Stoics reminded themselves, today I may die. This isn't morbidity, it's clarity. Most people waste decades pretending immortality is guaranteed. The Stoics didn't waste their minds on illusions. Memento mori, remember death, isn't meant to scare you, it's meant to liberate you. When you live every day with death in mind, fear diminishes. Rejection loses its sting because social opinion is meaningless to a virtuous mind. Loss loses its weight because attachment to externals has already been minimized. Courage is forged by confronting inevitability. A Stoic never hopes for safety. He accepts the battlefield exists and chooses to fight with excellence anyway. Rejection is another fear most people cannot stomach. Humans are wired for approval, yet approval is external and fleeting. The Stoics called it a trap. Surrender your mind to someone else's judgment, and you are no longer free. Seneca instructed, it is the power of the mind to be unconquered. You cannot control whether someone likes you or not, whether society accepts your actions, whether peers applaud your achievements, but you can control how you respond, with reason, with integrity, with patience. Rejection is merely feedback, not condemnation. Every insult, every dismissal, every ignored effort is data, not decree. Once you detach your self-worth from external validation, rejection stops being fearsome. The Stoic views it as a teacher. Who truly matters? Are my principles aligned with virtue? Am I acting rightly? If yes, then rejection is irrelevant. Loss too is inevitable, and people panic as if losing positions or relationships were permanent destruction. Stoics cultivated detachment through constant reflection. Do you think you own this? No, it is lent to you by fate. That principle turns loss from horror into opportunity. Marcus Aurelius wrote about possessions, wealth, even relationships. They are temporary, external, indifferent. You fear losing them because you imagine your happiness depends on them. But Stoicism teaches happiness arises from virtue and inner mastery, not things outside your control. Imagine your home burning. Imagine betrayal by a friend. The panic is natural, but if you've trained your mind, you can observe it with composure. Loss isn't annihilation. It's transformation. The Stoic mind bends, does not break. The core Stoic method is premeditation malorum. Picture every fear you have in vivid detail before it happens. Your own death, the rejection you dread, the possessions and people you might lose. Imagine the worst, feel it, then accept it. Once you've rehearsed disaster, reality is no longer shocking. You encounter loss or rejection and feel, I expected this, I am ready. Stoic courage thrives in preparedness. Unlike panic, this is not avoidance or denial, it's deliberate confrontation. You simulate the worst-case scenario to neutralize fear's grip.
When the real event occurs, it is no longer terrifying. It is simply a challenge to act virtuously. Death, rejection, and loss all share one underlying truth. They reveal the impermanence of the world. Stoicism is ultimately about learning to anchor your mind in what does not perish: reason, virtue, and self-command. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself, time is a river, events flow, the universe changes, accept it. If you can internalize impermanence, the fear of death vanishes, the fear of losing friends or possessions fades. The Stoic practices detachment not as cruelty, but as liberation. The world does not own him. He moves through life unshaken, composed, free to act rightly without panic or regret. There's a final subtle layer. Fear often disguises itself as comfort-seeking. You avoid difficult conversations, ambitious projects, or deep emotional bonds because of fear of loss, rejection, or failure. But avoidance is surrender. The Stoics turned fear into fuel. By confronting uncomfortable truths early, speaking honestly, risking failure, pursuing the path of virtue, you train courage. The Stoic mind welcomes difficulty as the gym of the soul. Death is the final exercise. Rejection is the repetition. Loss is the weight that strengthens. Fear is no longer an obstacle. It becomes the tool for mastery. Now think about this practically. Every moment you delay action because of fear, every thought you spend imagining rejection or loss, every sleepless night anticipating death, that is wasted energy. The Stoics didn't waste energy. They acted according to virtue, prepared for inevitable outcomes, and detached themselves emotionally from the rest. Courage, acceptance, and control became a habit, a daily discipline, not an occasional miracle. Fear did not disappear, but it became powerless. It was seen, acknowledged, and transformed. And here's the Stoic secret modern minds ignore. You cannot eliminate fear. You can only master it. You cannot stop loss or death. You cannot make every person like you. You cannot escape pain, but you can train your mind to act, to respond with reason, to face every challenge without panic. The Stoics turned fear into clarity, rejection into insight, loss into liberation, death into acceptance. They weren't superhuman. They were disciplined, focused, and willing to look truthfully at what everyone else hides from. So when your heart races, when you feel the shadow of mortality, when someone turns against you, when possessions fade, pause, breathe, observe. Ask, what can I control? How can I act virtuously? That is the Stoic response. That is the antidote to fear. That is how you move from a life of panic, avoidance, and regret to a life of composure, courage, and freedom. And the deeper truth, mastery over these fears creates a mind that cannot be shaken by anything external, a mind that sees reality clearly, acts wisely, and rests in profound inner peace, no matter what the universe throws its way.
Part 7. Using Stoic discipline to conquer everyday fears and build resilience. This is where theory meets daily life. All the insights on fear, control, death, rejection, and loss only matter if they transform the way you move through each day. Fear is not just epic battles or life or death moments. It lives in the small choices, the unnoticed anxieties, the habitual compromises we make to avoid discomfort. The Stoics understood this. They didn't wait for monumental crises to exercise courage. They built resilience in the ordinary. Every morning, every interaction, every decision was an opportunity to test, train, and strengthen the mind against fear. The man who conquers daily fear conquers all fear. This is why Epictetus advised, don't demand that things happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do, and you will go on well. Discipline is not restriction, it's freedom. The freedom to act clearly, regardless of circumstance. To build this resilience, the Stoics relied on habitual exposure to small discomforts. Modern life, in contrast, shields us from every challenge. We live in climate-controlled comfort,
escape boredom through endless entertainment, and avoid social confrontation. Fear flourishes in this padded world. The Stoic deliberately sought friction. Wake early, endure hunger, take cold showers, speak truths even when they sting, engage in voluntary effort. Every small act of discipline conditions the mind to withstand larger tests. Fear, rejection, and loss are no longer insurmountable because you've rehearsed discomfort on a micro level. Small exposure builds large courage. Everyday fears often disguise themselves as minor anxieties. Fear of judgment at work, fear of speaking up in social situations, fear of asking for help in small projects. Stoicism teaches you to confront these immediately. Why? Because the same neural pathways that generate panic in minor events will flare in major ones if left untrained. Courage is a skill, not a trait. Resilience is built by repeated, deliberate action against the small fears until fear no longer dictates your behavior. The Stoics called this ascesis, a disciplined practice that fortifies the soul. Every small victory over fear compounds. Every moment you act with integrity, despite discomfort, strengthens your internal backbone. Marcus Aurelius frequently reminded himself, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. Fear will tempt you to compromise, to avoid confrontation, to speak lies, to cling to safety. Discipline is required to say no to fear-driven impulses. Every act of moral courage, every refusal to surrender to fear, strengthens resilience. You train the mind to be steady amid chaos, calm amid panic, decisive amid uncertainty. The more you internalize this, the less the external world controls you. An essential tool for resilience is self-reflection at the end of each day. The Stoics spent time reviewing their actions, examining where fear had influenced choices, where discipline had prevailed, and where lapses occurred. This honest audit builds awareness, which in turn strengthens self-control. Fear shrinks when you illuminate its patterns. Resilience grows when you identify and correct its influence. By nightly reflection, the Stoic turns each day into a training session for the soul, ensuring continual growth, refinement, and readiness for the inevitable challenges ahead. The Stoics also emphasized mental rehearsals. Before difficult encounters, they would visualize the situation in detail, anticipate challenges, and prepare a virtuous response. Fear often paralyzes because the mind encounters novelty unprepared. By mentally simulating the hardship, you reduce the power of surprise. Your reactions become intentional rather than reflexive. Courage emerges naturally when the mind has rehearsed action, because fear is never faced blindly. It has already been studied, understood, and planned for. Consider social fear, fear of being judged, ridiculed, or misunderstood. Modern humans are excessively dependent on social validation, but the Stoics knew the power of internal standards. When your sense of worth derives from your virtue and reason, external judgment loses authority. You stop fearing rejection because rejection does not threaten your values, only your comfort. You act rightly, speak truthfully, and accept consequences with equanimity. Fear in social scenarios dissolves when you stop outsourcing your self-worth. Courage and resilience are built when actions are guided by principle, not opinion. Another layer is physical and emotional conditioning together. The Stoics understood that a weak body amplifies fear, and a disciplined body strengthens it. Exercise, fasting, exposure to cold or heat. These are not ends in themselves, but training grounds for the mind. Each physical challenge is a rehearsal in discomfort, building tolerance, patience, and endurance. Resilience is holistic. It is cultivated in body, mind, and soul simultaneously. Fear shrinks when your body can withstand discomfort and your mind can remain calm under pressure. Then there is the discipline of emotional detachment. The Stoics distinguished between passion and reason. Modern society encourages indulgence in fear, anger, and desire. But fear thrives on emotional attachment. Stoicism teaches you to observe without being swept away. You see fear arise, but you do not act compulsively on it. You allow it to inform you without dictating action. This detachment is the ultimate weapon for resilience, the ability to navigate life with clarity while fear swirls around you. Finally, consider the compound effect of disciplined practice. Fear is rarely conquered overnight. Courage is built incrementally. Each small act of discipline, each moment of choosing principle over panic, strengthens the mind for future trials. Rejection becomes easier, loss becomes lighter, death becomes less terrifying, not because you are fearless, but because you are trained in resilience. Your mind, once dominated by fear, becomes a fortress, and every fear you face becomes an opportunity to strengthen its walls further. The Stoic discipline of facing small daily fears, reflecting, rehearsing, detaching, and training the body is not theoretical, it is actionable, practical, and transformative. You are not born fearless. You are not naturally resilient. But through deliberate, consistent practice, fear's power diminishes, courage expands, and resilience becomes habitual. The ordinary life, filled with minor anxieties, becomes a battlefield of growth, and by winning daily skirmishes, you build the unshakable mind capable of facing anything. Fear is inevitable, but mastery over it is within reach. Stoicism hands you the roadmap. The path is disciplined, the effort is daily, but the result is profound. A mind that does not tremble, a soul that does not falter, and a life lived boldly, fully, and without surrender to the tyranny of fear.
Part 8. Deep Stoic strategies to stay calm in chaos and uncertainty. This is where we take all previous lessons and apply them directly to the chaotic, unpredictable reality of modern life. Fear, anxiety, and uncertainty are not occasional visitors, they are constant companions. The difference between the ordinary person and the Stoic is how they respond when the world spins out of control. Marcus Aurelius, living amid wars, plagues, and political intrigue, constantly reminded himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Chaos will always exist. Uncertainty is inevitable. The Stoic does not plead for calm from the world, he generates calm within himself. That inner calm is the weapon, the fortress, and the anchor amid storms. The first strategy is mental reframing. Fear thrives when you interpret events as catastrophic. Uncertainty paralyzes when you project worst-case scenarios without solution. Stoicism teaches you to step back and analyze events logically. What is truly under your control? What is indifferent? By separating what you can act upon from what you cannot, your mind stops overreacting. Epictetus said, "It is not events themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them." Reframing transforms chaos from threat to challenge, from paralysis to opportunity. Second, prepare for volatility. Marcus Aurelius practiced premeditatio malorum, imagining the worst before it happens. This mental rehearsal is not pessimism, it's preparation. Imagine losing a job, a relationship, or status. Visualize betrayal, failure, and scarcity. Feel it, accept it, then move forward. When real chaos arises, it will be less shocking because your mind has already encountered it.
Preparation reduces fear, increases clarity, and allows you to act decisively rather than react emotionally. Third, focus on action, not outcome. Uncertainty is terrifying when you equate effort with guarantee. The Stoics knew that outcomes are never fully in your control. You can act virtuously, decisively, and rationally, but success is not promised. Fear dissolves when your concern shifts from "what will happen" to "am I doing what is right?" This focus generates calm because it anchors you to principles rather than probability. Courage emerges not from certainty, but from committed action amidst uncertainty. Fourth, practice detachment from external validation. Chaos becomes unbearable when your peace depends on the world approving you. Stoics cultivated independence from external opinions. Seneca wrote, "A wise man is self-sufficient. He has everything within." When approval, praise, or circumstance do not dictate your emotional state, storms cannot destabilize you. Detachment is not indifference, it is power. You act, perform, and endure without needing the world to reward or affirm you. Fifth, cultivate present moment awareness. Chaos often overwhelms because the mind races ahead, predicting disaster. Anxiety thrives on anticipation. Stoics anchored themselves in the present. Focused breathing, clear assessment, and attention to immediate action reduce the impact of hypothetical futures. Mindfulness is the modern term. The Stoics practiced it daily. By concentrating on now, the actions you can take immediately, fear of uncertainty loses dominance. The present becomes your domain. Chaos is observed, not internalized. Sixth, embrace small discomforts daily. Exposure to voluntary hardship prepares the mind for involuntary chaos. Cold showers, fasting, physical exertion, early rising. These are not punishments, they are conditioning tools. Each moment of voluntary stress strengthens your tolerance. When an actual crisis strikes, your nervous system has already been trained. Fear is reduced, focus increases, and calm emerges naturally. Resilience is not theoretical, it is embodied through repeated practice. Seventh, control your responses to others' behavior. Uncertainty often comes from people, colleagues, family, strangers, whose actions you cannot predict. The Stoics taught that external behavior is outside your control. Your reaction is everything. Someone insults, deceives, or obstructs you. You respond rationally, not emotionally. By controlling your responses, you convert external chaos into internal order. You retain agency. You maintain calm. The storm remains outside. The fortress within stands intact. Eighth, use philosophy as armor. Marcus Aurelius journaled daily, reminding himself of virtue, mortality, and impermanence. Reflection and philosophy create a lens that transforms perception. Chaos cannot intimidate a mind trained to see reality objectively, to understand that all things are transient, and to value action over comfort. When adversity arises, philosophical principles act as anchors, keeping reason intact, emotion balanced, and fear contained. Ninth, practice gratitude in adversity. Stoics recognize that even in chaos, there is something to appreciate: life itself, the opportunity to act virtuously, the ability to learn from struggle. Gratitude shifts perspective from victimhood to empowerment. You stop focusing on what threatens you and start noticing what equips you to endure. Fear loses its intensity when the mind prioritizes opportunity over threat, growth over suffering, action over complaint. 10th, commit to consistency under pressure. Chaos tests the mind not once, but repeatedly. One act of calm does not create a Stoic. Daily reinforcement does. Courage, clarity, and resilience grow as habits, not one-time feats. Each day you face minor disruptions, small setbacks, and inconveniences with composure. You train the mind to remain steady when greater chaos arrives. Discipline is compounded. Fear shrinks. Calm becomes default. Finally, Stoicism teaches that chaos is natural. The universe is change. Uncertainty is the only constant. Resisting reality amplifies fear. Accepting it, seeing it as natural law rather than personal attack, creates profound calm. The Stoics' goal is never to control the uncontrollable. It is to remain unyielding inside, no matter the external whirlwind. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "Everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is a perspective, not the truth. Chaos is perspective. Mastery is internal." By applying these strategies, reframing, preparation, action-focused effort, detachment, mindfulness, exposure, response control, philosophy, gratitude, and consistent practice, fear and anxiety lose their grip. You become the eye of the storm, observing without panic, acting without hesitation, enduring without collapse. Chaos remains, but it no longer rules you. Uncertainty persists, but you remain calm. You cultivate a mind that is a fortress, a soul that is unshakable, and a life where fear no longer dictates choices. Stoicism doesn't promise a world without fear. It promises a mind that is stronger than fear. It doesn't remove uncertainty, but it removes paralysis. It doesn't erase death, loss, or rejection, but it ensures you navigate them with courage and clarity. This is the Stoic path, disciplined, deliberate, consistent. Each principle practiced daily compounds, creating resilience that is unstoppable. Life will always throw chaos, uncertainty, and adversity your way. But if you implement these strategies, you will meet each challenge not with panic, but with composure. You will act, endure, and grow. Fear remains, but it becomes powerless. Uncertainty persists, but calm is your weapon. Clarity is your shield. Discipline is your fortress. And through it all, you remain unshakable, unstoppable, and fully alive.
Part 9. Applying Stoic fear mastery to career, relationships, and ambition. This is where the Stoic philosophy of fear and anxiety moves from abstract theory to practical life application. Fear does not only exist in philosophical exercises, it dominates your career, your relationships, and the pursuit of personal ambitions. Most people sabotage themselves daily without realizing it. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of conflict, fear of loss. These are the invisible chains that keep potential trapped, opportunities ignored, and greatness unclaimed. The Stoics recognized that mastery over fear is meaningless unless applied to real life, and they built systems, practices, and mental frameworks to ensure that inner calm translated into effective action. In your career, fear often masquerades as perfectionism or hesitation. You hesitate to speak up in meetings, to pitch new ideas, to take leadership roles, to negotiate a raise because of the possibility of failure or criticism. Stoicism teaches that fear of outcome is irrelevant. What matters is right action. You cannot control whether a colleague approves of your suggestion or if your boss accepts your proposal, but you can control the clarity, effort, and virtue in your execution. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself that the world is indifferent. The only true measure is your own judgment of your effort and integrity. By focusing on what is within your control, preparation, effort, attitude, and action,
Fear diminishes and courage becomes habitual. Rejection and failure, inseparable from career growth, are tools for refining skill and character. Epictetus wrote, "Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens." Every setback is an opportunity to improve. Every criticism is a lesson, and every uncomfortable moment is a chance to strengthen resilience. By embracing this mindset, you neutralize fear's power over professional decisions. The mind trained in Stoic principles does not hesitate to act because the outcome is unknown. It acts because virtue, effort, and rationality are assured. In relationships, fear often takes the form of attachment, insecurity, or the need for validation. Fear of rejection, fear of conflict, and fear of loss distort decisions, creating passive, dependent, or reactive behaviors. Stoicism teaches emotional independence without detachment from compassion. You do not relinquish care for others, but you relinquish the illusion that your peace depends on their behavior. You act rightly, communicate clearly, and respond with empathy, yet remain unshaken by rejection or disapproval. This creates authentic relationships grounded in virtue and clarity rather than neediness and fear. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly reminded himself, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, I will meet people who are meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful, but I will not be harmed in my mind." By anticipating interpersonal difficulties, the Stoic meets them with composure and purpose, not panic. Ambition, the pursuit of greatness, is perhaps where fear is most insidious. Most people abandon dreams before taking the first step, paralyzed by fear of failure, judgment, or the unknown. Stoicism teaches a paradoxical approach. Pursue your ambition fully while detaching from outcomes. The universe may deny you the reward, but virtue ensures that effort is never wasted. Courage is measured in action, not result. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." Fear wastes life. Acting with discipline regardless of fear transforms ambition from wishful thinking into purposeful progress. Practical application also requires risk assessment with rational courage. Fear is often confused with prudence. Stoicism does not advocate blind recklessness, it advocates rational bravery. Understand the risks, prepare as thoroughly as possible, anticipate challenges, and then act. Fear loses its paralyzing effect when confronted with preparation and reason. The Stoic warrior, whether in life or career, does not hope for safety. He ensures readiness, takes responsibility for decisions, and moves forward unflinchingly. Decision-making under fear is another critical application. When faced with a difficult choice, the ordinary mind hesitates, oscillates, or procrastinates due to anticipated discomfort. The Stoic asks, "What is within my control? What is virtuous? What action aligns with reason and principle?" Fear no longer dictates action because decision-making is rooted in rationality and ethics rather than emotion. This method applies across professional negotiations, personal confrontations, and long-term strategic choices. Fear is reduced, decisiveness is strengthened. Stoic fear mastery also emphasizes reflective journaling to track growth. Each day, review decisions, responses, and fears. Which fears were rational? Which were imagined? Which choices were dictated by fear rather than virtue? By continuous reflection, patterns are revealed, weaknesses addressed, and courage reinforced. Career, relationships, and personal ambition all benefit from this ongoing calibration of the mind. The Stoic is not rigid, but constantly learning, adjusting, and reinforcing internal mastery.
Another aspect is anticipating social pressures. Fear of public opinion, gossip, or peer judgment often prevents authentic action. Stoicism teaches that opinions of others are external and beyond your control. Virtue and reason are internal and fully controllable. Acting according to principle, irrespective of social response, frees the mind. Fear of judgment collapses because it no longer dictates your actions. This strengthens both personal integrity and relational clarity, creating influence without attachment. Finally, integrating fear mastery into daily practice builds compound resilience. Minor fears confronted daily, presenting ideas, negotiating conflicts, speaking truth, risking vulnerability, accumulate into an unshakable foundation. When major crises arise, career upheaval, relationship loss, or high-stakes opportunities, the mind is trained, disciplined, and unflappable. Courage and clarity become default states, not exceptions. Fear remains present, but it is powerless. It is observed, assessed, and transformed into action. The Stoic approach to applying fear mastery in career, relationships, and ambition is comprehensive. Focus on what you can control, act virtuously, prepare mentally, detach from outcome, embrace discomfort, reflect daily, and maintain rational courage. Fear is no longer an obstacle, but a signal, a teacher revealing areas for growth, vigilance, and fortification. By consistently practicing these principles, the Stoic mind becomes a weapon against chaos, a guide through uncertainty, and a source of unshakable calm, confidence, and effectiveness. In career, fear no longer paralyzes decisions. In relationships, fear no longer compromises authenticity. In ambition, fear no longer limits aspiration. Through disciplined application, Stoic fear mastery transforms life from reactive suffering into proactive, principled, and courageous living.
Part 10. Final synthesis. Living fearlessly and stoically every day. This is where everything you've learned about fear, anxiety, death, rejection, loss, and chaos comes together into a comprehensive blueprint for daily life. The Stoic philosophy is not meant to be theoretical. It is meant to transform every action, thought, and decision you make. A life lived without mastery over fear is fragmented, reactive, and constantly anxious. A life lived stoically is integrated, proactive, and guided by reason. By now you've explored mental reframing, premeditation of adversity, detachment from outcomes, emotional independence, physical and mental conditioning, resilience building, and practical application in career, relationships, and ambition. Part 10 synthesizes all of these elements into a system for daily fearlessness. First, understand that fear will never vanish completely. It is a biological reality designed to protect you. What changes with Stoicism is your relationship with fear. Instead of being a master over your mind, fear becomes an advisor, a messenger that signals areas requiring attention, preparation, or action. Marcus Aurelius constantly reflected, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." Stoicism gives you the tools to revoke fear's authority over your mind. By internalizing this principle, you cultivate a state of constant vigilance, clarity, and calm. Daily practice begins with morning preparation. Before the day begins, anticipate potential challenges. Rehearse mentally the difficult conversations, unexpected setbacks, and moments of discomfort you may encounter. This is not pessimism. It is strategic rehearsal. By visualizing adversity, you reduce its power to shock or destabilize you.
You arrive at each moment with awareness, composure, and readiness. Every micro-challenge becomes an opportunity to exercise courage. Each encounter with adversity is a rehearsal for greater trials. Second, anchor yourself in virtue and principle. Fear thrives when your sense of security depends on external outcomes, social approval, or temporary possessions. The Stoics shift the foundation inward. Character, reason, and virtue are the ultimate measures of success. Whether you succeed or fail, gain approval, or face rejection, the Stoic remains centered. Epictetus wrote, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." Fear loses its grip because it cannot touch the core of your being, your reason, your integrity, your discipline. Third, practice mindful engagement in the present. Chaos and uncertainty terrify because the mind projects disasters into the future. Anxiety thrives on speculation. Stoicism anchors attention in the immediate moment, focusing on what is actionable now. This could be a task at work, a response in a conversation, or a decision about personal conduct. By engaging fully with the present, fear diminishes because it can no longer dominate a mind grounded in action. The present is where mastery occurs. The past is gone. The future is unknowable, but the now is yours to govern. Fourth, embrace voluntary discomfort. The Stoics deliberately subjected themselves to challenges that were not strictly necessary. Fasting, early rising, physical exertion, and mental austerity. This trains the mind and body to withstand involuntary discomfort without panic. Each voluntary challenge expands your capacity to endure uncertainty, loss, rejection, or failure. Modern humans avoid all discomfort, and in doing so, magnify fear. Courage is not the absence of discomfort, it is action in the presence of discomfort. Resilience grows through repeated exposure, turning fear into familiarity, paralysis into fluidity, and anxiety into preparedness. Sixth, observe and regulate your internal responses. You cannot control external events, but you can control your reaction. Someone insults you, a project fails, a loved one disappoints. The event itself is neutral. Your interpretation, judgment, and response create emotional impact. Stoicism trains you to respond rationally rather than emotionally. Pause, assess, act according to principle. Emotional regulation is a muscle. Every choice to respond with reason strengthens it. Over time, your mind becomes a fortress, impervious to panic, gossip, or instability. Seventh, reflect and journal nightly. Daily reflection is the Stoic mechanism for continuous improvement. Evaluate decisions, observe moments of fear, identify lapses in courage, and celebrate moments of discipline. By documenting and analyzing your mental habits, you illuminate patterns and reinforce virtuous behavior. This transforms daily living into a gym for the mind. Fear is no longer a vague, unexamined force. It becomes a measurable, actionable aspect of your development. Eighth, embrace mortality and impermanence. The Stoics constantly reminded themselves of the inevitability of death, loss, and change. Memento mori, or remember death, is not morbidity, it is liberation. By recognizing that all things are transient, fear of loss and failure diminishes. Rejection becomes irrelevant because social approval is fleeting. Material loss loses weight because possessions are temporary. Death itself is reframed as natural and beyond control. Anchored in impermanence, the Stoic mind acts without attachment, fear, or hesitation. Ninth,
commit to ongoing discipline and habit formation. Courage, resilience, and fearlessness are not one-time achievements. They are cultivated through consistent practice, repeated daily in small and large actions. Morning preparation, voluntary discomfort, present moment focus, reflection, rational response, and principle-driven action compound over time. Each repetition strengthens neural pathways, reinforces virtue, and reduces fear's influence. The Stoic does not rely on inspiration. He relies on habit. Fear cannot withstand a disciplined mind operating according to principle every day. Finally, live as if each moment is a test of mastery. Life will always present challenges. Fear will always arise. Chaos will always exist. Uncertainty is eternal. But you can choose how to respond. By internalizing the Stoic framework, fear becomes manageable, anxiety becomes temporary, and uncertainty becomes navigable. Courage, clarity, and calm are cultivated and reinforced with deliberate, disciplined effort. Life is no longer a series of reactive events dictated by fear. It is a deliberate practice of excellence, virtue, and resilience. The Stoic lives fully, acts decisively, and meets the world with all its unpredictability, without surrender. To synthesize, fear cannot be eradicated, but its power can be neutralized. By anchoring your mind in virtue, practicing preparation, focusing on the present, exposing yourself to voluntary challenges, controlling responses, reflecting nightly, integrating principles across all life domains, embracing impermanence, and maintaining daily discipline, you achieve unshakable courage. Life becomes a canvas for deliberate, principled action. Fear remains, but it is powerless. Anxiety comes and goes, but it does not dictate action. Chaos unfolds, but the mind remains firm. The Stoic path is clear. Mastery of fear is mastery of life. When you integrate these principles into every action, every thought, and every decision, you become the embodiment of Stoic fearlessness. You no longer react to the world. You respond with reason. You no longer anticipate calamity with panic. You face it with preparation. You no longer rely on others for validation. Your self-worth is internal, grounded in virtue. Life, with all its unpredictability, becomes an arena for excellence. And this is the ultimate gift of Stoicism, a mind that remains calm, courageous,